Hello and welcome to coverage of Grand Prix Detroit. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Luis Scott Vargas, and we've got Ralph Batesh playing Abzan Company and Huang Haoshan playing Blue-White Eldrazi in the semifinals. And these guys are rumbling here to try to see who's going to claim that seat in the finals. $10,000 goes to the winner of this GP. A lot on the line for these players.
Not to mention 8 pro points. 8 pro points, especially I know that Huang Haoshan is, he's been on the Pro Tour for a number of years, played him in multiple Pro Tours. He, those 8 pro points can go a lot towards hitting a higher level. And for Ralph, getting qualified for Pro Tour and having 8 points does give you a pretty big step towards, hitting silver, gold, or even platinum. Ralph starting with a Noble Hierarch, which is exactly what he wants to be. These decks play something like 7 1-drops. Looks at Ralph's going with 4 birds, 3 hierarchs, and then 2 wall of roots. So if you don't have a hand with one of those 9 cards, it's got to be pretty good to keep it. It's kind of like, his opponent's deck, which doesn't have a hand with Eye of Ugin or Eldrazi Temple. I'm also skeptical of how good it is.
Right, and interesting for this matchup because both decks are looking to, they're looking to accelerate out, different types of threats. But the Abzan Company deck has sort of 2 different ways to attack you, right? It can do it through the value route, where it gets 2-for-1s and maybe even further than that, or it can try to go for the big combo finish, where it can gain infinite life and then eventually do infinite damage to you as well, where the Blue-White Eldrazi deck actually does technically have access to some combo shenanigans, but that's not what it's really here to do. It's here to just overpower you in the early to mid part of the game by basically spending more mana than you get to spend.
Yeah, that's the key, is that playing Thought-Knot Seer for 2 mana, playing Eldrazi Mimic for 0 mana, playing Reality Smasher for 3 mana. Like, look, this is the classic opening. This is it's
ridiculous.
The Eldrazi, I attack you for 4 on turn 2 and take your, only card left.
And 4 is a nice number here, given the Spellskite that Ralph Batesh had played. And, I got to say, this was going to be just a fantastic draw from Ralph here.
One of his best,
he was going to go land Collected Company with 1 combo piece already on turn 3.
With a Spellskite there to protect from removal.
And a Spellskite backup. And instead, he has Thought-Knot Seer strip away that Collected Company and exile it from his hand. So can he recover? No, he's going to immediately crack a Horizon Canopy to try.
I think if I see my opponent crack Horizon Canopy in this space, I would assume they drew a land on their turn.
Wow, now that's an untapped Temple Garden here.
Oh, he already played
He played a land.
Horizon Canopy, yeah.
So a little bit of a shortcut there from Ralph. He cracked his Horizon Canopy, just put it right into the graveyard, but just, the act of not actually playing a land kind of got him there. But Huang was like, let's just play 1 per turn for now, and he's going to take his turn.
Huang hasn't agreed to that. His first 2 turns are 2 mana lands. He's in for playing 2 a turn.
So Ralph was just trying to even the playing field
only
a little
fair.
bit. Yeah, fair enough. Uh-oh. I see tapping on the table. All right, well, that often means, combat damage is being calculated. But in this case, he's just going to crunch in there and get in for 8. Knock Ralph down to 8, excuse me.
Yeah, and luckily for Ralph, Huang did not follow up with the classic turn 3 Reality Smasher. To complete the actual best draw.
Okay, well, he's going to have to settle for a much less potent play here with an Eldrazi Sky Spawner. Eternal Witness is going to get back the Horizon Canopy. So not exactly the most potent play from Batesh, but he's slowly moving forward. Remember, the Collected Company, unfortunately for Ralph, was exiled, so he doesn't get to get it back with his Witness. He's just going to pass the turn back here.
And the good thing about Witness, besides getting back Canopy, which draws a card, you can also block Thought-Knot Seer and sacrifice to Viscera Seer in order to scry for 1. So Ralph's going to get a couple more looks at cards this game before he dies.
What does the game look like where Ralph wins this game?
Collected Company into 2 combo pieces is certainly the easiest and most direct route to victory. Hitting Malira or Anafenza plus Kitchen Finks to gain infinite life and stack your deck with scry triggers. And that is what Ralph is looking for. But he could also potentially string together a company into more chump blockers and more witnesses and keep doing that. Though I think that he's going to be under a significant amount more pressure this turn.
Is that a Reality Smasher?
I believe so. And even if it isn't, Huang has access to a Drowner. So I think we're going to see some attacks this turn.
All right. Well, let's kick things off with the Reality Smasher here. He's also going to trigger the Mimic. Wow, the whole team's coming into the red zone here for Huang and really putting the pressure on Ralph Patesh, who finds himself at 8 life, facing down a couple of 5-power attackers, one of them with trample, a 2-power flyer in the air, the 1-1, and of course the 4-4 Thought Not Seer. That's a lot of attackers.
Yeah, Ralph is actually 1 life short of being able to block the 2 5/5s. Right now he's taking 8, so he's going to be forced to throw Viscera Seer in the way, which is really bad news because that means that he can't actually assemble the combo. There's no way to survive here that does not involve Viscera Seer.
Yeah, he's trying. He's trying to assemble some type of blocks here, but he had to tap his Noble Hierarch to play the Eternal Witness here, and that left it unable to block. And this is just tough. I mean, this could be the game slipping away from Ralph Patesh here. You know, he had a glimmer of hope there with some of the lines that you described. He had to get, fairly lucky to make. He would have to get fairly lucky to make that work. But now, down a Viscera Seer, and with his board comprised of just a Noble Hierarch, it's going to be incredibly difficult for him to get back into this thing. Also, Huang is losing, what, a Scion here?
He's losing a Scion. I think he can live with that.
Yeah. I don't think that Ralph is going to be able to live with that, though.
I mean, Ralph needs to now hit like Collected Company into Fiend Hunter plus Kitchen Finks or something along those lines.
Something absurd. And also have Huang do nothing. Or very little. Wow.
Well.
All right. The big punch leaves you at 1, Ralph Patesh. So this is a huge draw stab. This is going to decide game 1. All right. Well, Horizon Canopy is going to get cracked, but it's only going to leave him with 3 mana, and that's going to do it. Huang Haoshan quite easily there picks up the win through what I have to say was a very good draw from Ralph Patesh. I mean, when you looked at that opening hand and you mapped out what was going to happen on turns 1, 2, and 3, it looked really good for him.
Yeah, Ralph can't actually ask for that much of a better hand. The problem is Thought Not Seer just trumped that Collected Company, and that was Ralph's payoff card.
Yeah. Thought Not Seer also matched up well, for Huang against, what Ralph had already played, like the 0-4 Spellskite. It can still just keep jamming. All right, so that's going to do it for that one. Let's check over on Evan Buchholz versus Eric English here. And it looks like we've got Kozilek's Return on the stack. No, it looks like it's in the graveyard. And it took out an Endless One, and I'm assuming like a Mimic under there?
Yeah, and Evan confirming that if Eric untaps and plays a World Breaker, things go poorly for Evan. The Kozilek's Return does as its name implies, and will kill, any number of drowners or displacers that Evan chooses to play.
Yeah, he's picked it up again. It's not getting any better for you, Evan. I'm assuming that Reality Smasher is kind of forcing the issue here, though.
Yeah, and at the very least, Eric will lose his Reality Smasher if he chooses to cast Return, and it's not clear that he has access to a World Breaker anyway. Though he has enough mana to cast it.
He does.
And
he
well,
has a World Breaker
he also
in
has
hand.
it.
Yeah.
It's not clear that he doesn't have World Breaker. Well, no, it's very clear.
It's actually quite saw it pretty clearly.
No, but who's to say?
Right. All right, so Evan went ahead and sacked a Scion to tap down the Reality Smasher, but there it is. World Breaker. That's going to take down 1 land from Evan Buchholz and, of course, put the 5/7 reach out there as well and wipe the rest of the creatures off the board. So now the question is, does another Drowner get the job done? He's on, 5 mana here?
Yeah, another Drowner wouldn't be bad. We're going to see a World Breaker from Evan's side of the board.
Ah, very nice.
Yeah, Phyrexian Metamorph.
Where have you been?
My team discussed this prior to the tournament, and it does seem like a decent card. It also has nice combos with the Displacer because you can blink out the Metamorph, and then when it comes back in, choose a new card to copy.
Okay, there's an Endless One.
Oh, man. If Evan draws a land here, he's in great shape because he can go Displacer, immediately flicker your opponent's Endless One to kill it because it comes back with 0 counters.
Not quite.
No, but Sky Spawner is decent because you can play Sky Spawner and then sacrifice a token to play your Displacer, or you can just play Sky Spawner and just leave the token in play and then hopefully cast a Displacer next turn.
Okay.
The way Evan's tapping, it doesn't look like he intends to cast Displacer. If he's going to cast it, he's going to leave Hallowed Fountain untapped.
So just to recap, by the way, our semifinals are comprised of 3 Eldrazi decks and 1 Abzan company.
Yeah,
For
Abzan
those of you
Company is
keeping
the
track at home.
remaining non-Eldrazi representative.
So far, the other two GPs that happened this weekend also had all Eldrazi in the finals. Those were all blue-white Eldrazi mirrors in the first two in Melbourne and Bologna. So we'll see what happens here. We are live to go all three.
So Evan's in an interesting spot in terms of the game. He, I think, wants to cast this Displacer now, but now he's realizing the way he tapped, he has to take a point of damage. He realized that, and he does it anyway. And I think that's actually a good play. He should have tapped differently. That is true.
Yes.
Because he could have done it so without taking damage. But don't let the prospect of looking foolish prevent you from making the now correct play of still casting Eldrazi Displacer.
Yeah, I like that. Also, the biggest threat that Eric has is 7 power over there, and Evan drops to 8 here. You don't want to throw away a life point. At least it doesn't make that creature lethal. And Evan's going to immediately chump block here with an Eldrazi Sky Spawner to stay at 8 life. And you said it. Now things could look good. And, yeah, there's another Endless one, but this Displacer just does work here, right?
Yeah.
Another land would be good, though, right?
Land would be very good, except it was the wrong...
Not that land.
Evan's cards are not showing up in the order he pleases.
No.
I still think he's actually in decent shape because he gets to play this Drowner. And actually... Oh, he just gets to tap the 2 creatures and just attack.
He can just use
he can
them
just
both.
attack for 8. Yeah.
Wow.
So turns out land was good no matter what.
All right, so Evan Buchholz finds the victory there. That was nice. When we came in, it didn't look too good for him, but he kind of plodded along and ended up finding the victory there. You get a look at Evan on the upper right-hand side of your screen there as he starts to consult his sideboard. Looks like Ralph Batesh is maybe has a little sleeve issue here that they're taking a look at. Kind of interesting story here too. 3 of the players in our semifinals here, Batesh, Buchholz, and English, they've been hanging out all weekend. They had joked around earlier in the day that they would draw, whatever with each other to get into the top 8. And now all of a sudden they're all playing in the semifinals, and they're just all joking about it a lot because you know how you meet somebody at a tournament or maybe a friend of yours and you're like, oh, maybe I'll see you in the finals or that kind of thing, and then all of a sudden you find yourselves all in the semis together. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, it is nice when things work out.
Indeed. So, touching on that storyline again about the blue-white Eldrazi's and how we had Melbourne and Bologna both mirror matches in the finals. Now they're both up a game here.
Eldrazi is up a game in both matches.
Yeah. So we'll see how this pans out, but we really have a real shot here to go for all of it here.
It's kind of interesting that Ralph is actually not playing any big game hunters. We saw 2 in Ben Friedman's list, and Ben, of course, went 12-0, and then unfortunately lost his last 3 to not make top 8. But big game hunter looked pretty good for him. So Ralph does have an Intrepid Hero. That is kind of a pseudo big game hunter. It's still a 3-mana 1/1 actually, but it taps to kill a creature with power 4 or greater instead of just doing it when it comes into play. So a little more powerful and a little slower.
Yeah, because you can repeat it, right? It's just you don't get to do it immediately. Yeah, I think I'd rather have the big game hunter. I've seen so many of these games come down to that one turn where that Reality Smasher just has to die.
Yeah.
It's not about getting set up for the long game. It's just about not dying in the very near game.
I still have yet to see someone madness it out by targeting a Reality Smasher.
I haven't seen
that a real
either.
thing? Does that actually happen in real life?
I haven't seen it. I was explained. Somebody explained that to me on Friday. Hey, this is a thing that could happen, and maybe it's a little Christmas landy. But I mean, you can still court it out pretty easily or hit it with a company. It was hard to track those down here on site, by the way.
Well, yeah, you're not much of a big game hunter if you're easy to track down.
It's the other way around.
Well, I was just saying, sometimes the hunter becomes the hunted.
The biggest of games.
I mean, do you honestly think it's safe to hunt Eldrazi? That can't possibly be.
I don't even when Big Game Hunter came out. Eldrazi weren't a twinkle in the eye of a designer yet.
Yeah, I suppose Tarmogoyfs may have been though.
Right. Tell you what, compared to these Eldrazi, Tarmogoyfs don't look nearly as scary.
Oh yeah, they have looked, in fact, quite puny.
Yeah, very tame. All right, so players examining their opening hands here in the semis. We're heading into game 2, really, of both of our matches. Right now, Huang Haoshan finds himself up a game against Ralph Batesh playing Abzan Company. Huang's on blue-white Eldrazi. For those of you just joining us here in Detroit for the Modern GP, it's been a lot of Eldrazi.
Yep, that's one when we said, ooh, Unlucky Man's Paradise, the name submitted for Gemstone Caverns when it was an invitational card. I believe it was Tsuyoshi Fujita actually submitted that.
Yeah?
If my memory serves correctly. And Huang Haoshan has that in his opening hand. So it's a land that if you're going second and it's in your opening hand, so these two conditions have been met, you can put it into play and exile a card. And if you do exile a card, you get a luck counter on it. It's literally called a luck counter.
It's literally called that.
Yeah. And you end up with a land that can tap for colorless or tap for any color of mana.
Yeah, a lot of these Eldrazi decks, I think they just run the one of them, right?
Yes.
They don't want to test their luck too hard. I mean, what does it do if you don't meet these arcane requirements?
You can just play it and tap it for colorless mana.
Fair. He's
Hold on.
It's like stop. Yeah.
But it's so weird because if you're Ralph, you're like, what could you possibly be saying? Like,
right.
How can you tell me to hold on? It's your it's
yeah, and you see why Ralph was like, wait a minute, like, can I play my turn first? It's not fair.
It is in fact not fair when this works. I love more than anything that the finals of the Pro Tour Game 5 started with Gemstone Caverns, Eye of Ugin, Eldrazi Mimic, Vile Aggregate. Just like
luck counter in effect.
It's like this is the Pro Tour, and
yeah, welcome.
You know.
All right, so Huang does though.
Apparently, if there's a luck counter, it can't tap for colorless, but presumably Huang is okay with that.
I see. Exiling a card's a big deal. But yeah, modern these days is all about speed.
Do you think Huang was wondering if Ralph had a processor, so he didn't want to exile a card because he would enable Ralph's processors,
no.
like a Mindraker or something like that? Or do you
I don't think he was playing around Mindraker.
Well, collected company into Wasteland Strangler.
You just found the Abzan Eldrazi deck.
Yeah,
they're everywhere.
Though, the first iteration of Eldrazi deck before we had Oath of the Gatewatch did include Wasteland Strangler.
I
actually remember playing against this deck online.
All right, so no turn 1 play here, though, for Huang. He does have his...
No, he's only 1 mana short of a turn 1 Thought-Knot Seer, because he has Eye and Temple in hand.
Oh, wow.
That's what it looked like to me, so I think he's going to wait on that.
That's still pretty good. He'll get a turn 2 on the draw Thought-Knot Seer here. It was a Kitchen Finks there for Ralph.
Well, Thought-Knot Seer is going to make it so Ralph has to reveal all of his secrets.
All right, well, his secrets are plentiful. He's got a Court of Calling of Viscerous here and a Noble Hierarch to go along with one Godless Shrine.
My guess that he will not have a Court of Calling very soon.
Yes, that does seem to be the case. Now, that is interesting, though, Luis, because that would leave Ralph with a Viscerous here and a Kitchen Finks already on the battlefield. So 2 out of 3.
So which means if he drew Anafenza or Malira, he could actually just go off turn 3.
Yeah, he could just go off. He could play his land untapped. I suppose Anafenza, yeah, he could do that too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he could do that. Also, it opens up the door for a lot of cards like another Chord, another Company, that kind of thing. So another good draw here from Ralph, but you can see the power of Thought-Knot Seer disrupting him like it did in the first game while applying pressure. That's really the key here. And let's see if Ralph can find what he
Looks
needs.
like a Fiend Hunter. Fiend Hunter's pretty nice here.
Big Fiend Hunter?
Yeah.
Fiend Hunter's actually great here, right?
And Ralph, if he's worried about removal, what he can do is he can play Viscera Seer, Fiend Hunter target the Thought-Knot, and then sacrifice it in response, then Thought-Knot's gone forever. You don't see that on the cards you see now, like Banisher Priest or Banishing Light.
No.
Because they're just templated in a way, they're worded in such a way that if the Fiend Hunter wasn't in play, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah, I think he's going to do that.
Yeah,
too.
he is.
It makes sense. The 1-powered creature is just not that big of a deal, and getting rid of this thing for good is great.
Yeah, so Ralph gets to scry first.
Yep.
Then the Fiend Hunter ability resolves, and he will draw a card from Thought-Knot. Then Thought-Knot goes away, never to return.
Okay, so nice little sequence here from Ralph, who's really just looking for that third combo piece. Yeah, might as well get in there for 4. Down to 16. And this one looks pretty good for Ralph right now. You got to like his position. No board state here. for Huang right now. So he's got some work to do. All right, well, how about a Drowner of Hope? No, an Oblivion Sower. 4 cards, that's right, Ralph. No, yeah, all right. Okay, well, he hit a land.
Huh. Verdant Catacombs doesn't do
it?
anything. So unless, and actually neither player is playing Urborg, so Verdant Catacomb is going to take up some space on Huang's side of the battlefield. That's about the extent of it. I'm surprised he sided in Oblivion Sower. That's an interesting sideboard plan. Maybe he's trying to ramp up to something like Ulamog, which he does also have in his deck. Ralph's still a Malira or Anafenza away from going off. Court of Calling would, of course, obtain those cards as well.
Looks like Path to Exile to take out the Oblivion Sower here. And Ralph is kind of on plan A, just beating down with a Kitchen Finks and well, I guess just the Kitchen Finks here. No, jeez. I think just went up to 5 damage.
And you know, one of the reasons that I think cards are templated the way they are now is because it's just not that intuitive that if you sacrifice a Fiend Hunter, your creature wouldn't come back. That just doesn't make any sense.
It just doesn't add up.
So, I mean, I think it adds cool gameplay. I think it was cool this game that Ralph was able to use those tricks. I do think it just makes more sense for cards to not do that, though. And the newer versions of all these cards do not. As I see people in the chat asking, why didn't the Thought Nuts here come back? And that's a very good question. That's what you would expect to have happen. So
Totally.
Certainly being clear about why that happened is important. So looks like a Cavern of Souls.
So he's up to 7 mana here for Eldrazi spells? I suppose it's
8 even.
Is it 8?
Because he's got a Temple hiding there.
Temple in there as well. All right, well, what are we going to see? Okay, a Drowner of Hope. Solid. That will stem the bleeding from the Kitchen Finks. Doesn't disrupt Ralph a whole lot here, though.
Doesn't disrupt Ralph in the sense that Huang is not really in a position to like go aggro, sack signs, and attack with the 5/5, but it does mean that Ralph will have to find a removal spell or the combo to win. He's not going to win through Kitchen Finks beats anymore, or at least is less likely to.
Right, yeah, and especially now that there's even more blockers up for Huang here, so he's going to pass the turn back after playing an Eldrazi Sky Spawner. And let's see if Ralph can find his other piece of the combo. He's just cold top deck in here. Moving something out of the way. What is this?
A Witness or a Finks?
Oh, no, Witness. What can he get back? A Path, a land, or a Fiend Hunter?
I think Fiend Hunter is just better than Path right now, especially since you get a Scry out of it. So you can kill the Drowner and, again, sack it to Viscerous here in response to Trigger. And he can kill... Actually, if he wants to get a Scry engine going, he could Fiend Hunter his own Eternal Witness.
Sure.
And then let that resolve, then sack the Fiend Hunter, get back Witness, get back Fiend Hunter. You're paying 3 mana a turn to Scry every turn.
Hey.
Does that sound broken?
It doesn't sound broken. I could see it being correct in some scenarios, though. I like just getting rid of the
Drowner.
Here.
And now you're starting to slog through those tokens.
Yeah, this is kind of a cool attack now. He's basically just going to force a chump block here.
So it's funny because Huang kind of has incentive to be like, all right, well, I'll block with 2 tokens and a Sky Spawner, kill your Finks. It'll come back, but no longer will you be able to combo with Malira.
Yeah, that door is now open for...
Except the Township kind of then again slams that door shut because the interaction of Township and Persisted Finks is that you put a counter on everything and it knocks the counter off Finks. So, I mean, Huang is going to be aware of that and he's going to not be as excited to try to go down that path.
It gets so interesting there because then you could also take it to the next step of, if Huang's looking for something specific to try to lock the game or to try to take over, that would take Ralph an entire turn, right? Like, Ralph wouldn't be able to go off in most scenarios there because he doesn't have enough mana to activate the Gavany
it's definitely a downside.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's been a good game. Much better than the first, I'll say. All right, another Drowner of Hope here.
And
this board's getting pretty wide here for
I'm kind of thinking that Huang has... So he has 1 copy of Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger, in his sideboard, much like there's one in the booth, and he's going to build up towards using his Eye of Ugin to search for it. If he has Oblivion Sower in his deck, I just don't see those cards coming in without each other.
Okay.
So, given that, also you saw him chump with Sky Spawner instead of a Scion. I think he wants to preserve as much mana as possible, search for Ulamog. That puts Ralph on a very fast clock. Oh, that's a Court of Calling.
This looks like Court of Calling here. And right as Huang is completely out of cards, he played that Flooded Strand from hand. And I think Ralph has just top-decked it here. There it is, Court of Calling. Go get himself a Malira or an Onofenza.
Yeah, Onofenza ends up being a little better here, I think, because he can bolster infinitely. But either way, he gets infinite life. So Huang doesn't have enough mana to get Ugin or get Ulamog and play Ulamog in the same turn. Right? He can end of turn pay 3 and sack a bunch of Scions. Actually, then he'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Actually, Huang can end of turn. I think he can end of turn get Ulamog and then untap and cast it. So even though Ralph's at infinite life, Huang Haoshan might be able to get Ulamog, cast it to kill like Malira, Viscera Seer.
Okay.
And then deck Ralph with some Ulamog attacks.
With a couple attacks? Oh, man. That would be insane if Huang won this game. He's counting.
Yeah, it looks like it works to me.
So that puts the ball back in Batesh's court here. He just got to scry and stack whatever he wants to the top. He can also do it again, right? Like, I'm assuming he put a Murderous Red Cap on top.
Yeah, that is the assumption.
Right. But then if that plan were to get disrupted, he can just repeat the process and put something else on top, right?
He
like
can put something else
Exile.
on top, but it won't necessarily be good enough if the Malira and the Viscera Seer die. But Huang just got a tapped Hallowed Fountain end of turn, so I guess he's not searching. It's possible he does not have an Ulamog in his deck.
Okay.
So if Ralph has a red cap here, this should be the combo.
Bingo. Murderous Red Cap, repeat the process. Only needs to do it a few times here. He can do it as many as he wants, but Huang's at 10, so that should do it. Let's see if Huang has anything that he wants to respond with. I mean, he's hellbent, no cards in hand.
Yeah, and maybe he's just trying to figure out exactly, just be clear exactly what Ralph's doing, but...
Right. Can I tap some? You know, he's just looking at all the options, but there aren't any. And Ralph Batesh picks up game 2, so we're going to get a game 3 here on our main match, and it does look like our other match is done. I don't see players sitting there anymore.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we do have our first finalist, not from this match, of course, but from our side one, and that was Evan Buchholz.
Blue-White Eldrazi.
Blue-White Eldrazi. So if we're gonna make it, we're so far 5 out of 6 finalists across 3 GPs have been in Blue-White Eldrazi, and Huang Haoshan could be the 6th, but Ralph Batesh could lead the charge for the Abzan company and put himself into the finals.
So Huang is on the play this game, which means no Gemstone Cavern shenanigans, but it does also mean he gets to play his Thought Knots on turn 2 on the play. Players going in for a last-minute sideboard adjustment here. And of course, we are actually in game 3, so the players are tied 1-1 here. Ooh, it looks like Huang Haoshan has boarded in at least 1 copy of Stubborn Denial. That's a kind of good one. So it makes a spell, instant or sorcery cost 1 more, and it gets countered otherwise. But if you have a 4-power creature in play, which is not very difficult in the Eldrazi deck, it's just a straight-up hard counter for those types of spells. So stopping Court of Calling and Collected Company, and in a pinch, Path to Exile. Pretty powerful ability to have there.
It's like Ralph is just triple checking that he has exactly the configuration that he wants here, as this is a big one. And we've got some of our feature writers here, Corbin Hostler's on the site, and so is Mark Calderaro. And I just heard from Corbin. He says Huang's not being super talkative down there. He's taking it super seriously, and he's a full-time professional Magic player, and you can see why. A lot of money on the line here, and a lot of pro points as well. Ralph looks a little more relaxed.
Oh, just a little.
Yeah, he's joking around, and Huang is dialed in. You can tell. You can kind of feel the intensity off him there. Can certainly appreciate that. All right, so Huang, he was on the draw that game, but he had luck counter in effect. I mean, he just gets to be naturally on the play this time. It's got to be favored here, right? Like,
Yeah,
gets one of those great draws and just...
The deck on the play certainly is going to be ahead in this matchup.
It just feels like it's pretty tough, an uphill climb here for Ralph, because we've seen him have 2 good draws now and lose one of the games, and he did pick up the other one.
Ulubog makes an appearance.
I see him kind of waving at us from Huang's hand of 7 there.
Huang looks like he's got Sky Spawner, Ulubog, Dismember, 2 normal blue-white lands, I think an Ayavugan, and then I don't know what the last card is, but if the last card was like a Thought Knot, this would be an easy keep. Looks like a Drowner.
It's a Drowner, yeah.
I mean, I think this is a keepable hand. It's just not the best hand you can ever imagine.
Okay. Well, that's probably good for the viewership here, just because we might get a closer game here. Some of those broken starts from the blue-white Eldrazi deck can be so explosive. All right, Ralph. Slow start for him, too, though.
Yeah, it does not have the turn 1 accelerant.
He's had that each of the first 2 games, but just has to settle for a Godless Shrine. Would you lead that to would you think that he has something like Path to Exile or something like that, a removal spell in his hand?
My guess is that Ralph has a Wall of Roots. There just aren't very many hands you can keep that don't have Wall or a 1-drop, especially on the draw when you know that you're going to be under pressure pretty quickly.
Hollowed Fountain here for Huang as he looks to try to capture his seat here in the finals, where he would play the mirror match.
Huang drew a second Ayavugan, which is basically the worst draw in his deck, unfortunately for him.
Okay, well, he's going to have to settle for a turn 2 Eldrazi Sky Spawner. So not super explosive, but not too bad either. Gets a little pressure up, gets a little more mana ramp. And Ralph is going to go ahead and crack a Windswept Heath. It looks like he's decided what he actually wants to get with it.
Yeah, it's whether he wants Overgrown Tomb or Forest, since he's got a Plains in his hand.
And there's that Wall of Roots that we were talking about before. Like you said, it is slow, though the Wall of Roots is really nice, right? I mean, that's a nice blocker. It can block Thought Knot Seer if he were to be facing one of those down.
It also helps Ralph do something like cast a turn 3 Collected Company, which, I think if he has a company in his hand to go with that Plains, he might actually be in good shape this game.
Okay.
Because unless Huang drew a Reality Smasher or Thought Knot on this draw step, I think this turn involves land attack for 2 go, which is not the turn 3 you want.
No.
Oh, there is a Reality Smasher, which means that Huang can sacrifice the Eldrazi Scion and play the Smasher. He could also, if he wants, he actually does have that Dismember, so he could kill the Wall of Roots. Not an unreasonable play at all. And it looks like that's what he's choosing to do. Dismember takes out the Wall of Roots, so then Huang gets to smash for 3 and set Ralph back a turn. Ralph can't cast Collected Company this turn.
Okay, so Ralph falls down to 16 here, draws his card for the turn, finds a Plains. And he's going to settle for a Kitchen Finks here. Pretty fair play, all told, here in the early stages. Removal spell, card accelerator, a Finks, a couple of value creatures. But this is supposed to be where Huang is going to start turning the corner, right, where he can start playing things that are just over the top of what Ralph can do outside of combo. I mean, theoretically.
Oh, and Huang does still have that Reality Smasher. He doesn't have actually as many lanes as he'd like, because the second copy of of course, it being legendary means it doesn't do anything. And if Huang wants to play that Reality Smasher, he has to sacrifice an Eldrazi Scion. So that'll set him down to 2 lands plus an eye, which is pretty far away from casting Drowner of Hope. He would need to then draw an Eldrazi Temple exactly to be able to cast it.
He still has that Ulamog just sitting in his hand, miles away from that.
Yeah, Ulamog is, I think, unlikely to determine the outcome of this game. It's a nice backup plan. It means if the game does somehow stall, then Huang gets that option. But I don't think we're going to see an Ulamog appearance.
Right. And we're not going to see a Smasher either.
Yeah, we're not seeing a Smasher this turn.
It's just going to be another Sky Spawner here for Huang. He's going to be a little more patient here. So this does give him Drowner of Hope next turn, right?
You know, and I think he could have played that Sky Spawner last turn. I guess he was playing around this exact card, which is coming out now.
Wow.
Orzhov Pontiff.
Orzhov Pontiff is going to wreck Huang Haoshan's board here.
Do you think Ralph's going to give his Kitchen Finks +1/+1?
Just for a better attack.
No, I guess he's not. He's going to choose to give all of Huang's creatures -1/-1.
Jeez, that was brutal. Well, he just drew a Thought-Knot Seer.
He can't cast it. It's actually really funny.
He can't cast it.
He doesn't have access to colorless. He's got 2 lands that produce blue and white mana and an Eye of Ugin. Huang might not be able to cast anything this turn.
Wow, this has gotten really awkward.
His hand is
Huang.
Eye of Ugin,
He passed.
Ulamog, Thought-Knot Seer, Drowner of Hope, Reality Smasher. He actually is unable to play a card.
Wow. Ralph Batesh must feel immediate sense of relief. He's got a lot of cards in his hand. Again, he's played a fairly fair game here, but that Orzhov Pontiff was nasty.
Ralph hits Huang
4
down
more.
to 8. The Dismember cost a bunch of life. Ralph, he needs to close out this game quickly, because if Huang draws 1 land, and especially if it was an Eldrazi Temple, Huang can play a ton of cards, but...
Well, this gets interesting now, too, because now all of a sudden Ralph starting to attack from another angle here with Melira. What did he find?
He found another Thought-Knot Seer.
Oh, no. So he's going to be able to knock Huang down to 2 here by attacking with Melira.
Thought-Knot Seer, or
Orzhov
Pontiff
just getting the work done.
And at this point, it's pretty plausible that Ralph has a removal spell in hand, which means that Huang is just in a lot of trouble. I mean, first of all, he can't cast anything. Even if he does draw something, there's a good chance Ralph can just remove it from play.
Wow. You don't see this very often with the Eldrazi deck.
Yeah, the straight-up fizzle.
Stumbling like this. But, man, this is really tough. Huang says, not like this. All these great cards in his hand, and he can't deploy any threats.
Yeah, Ralph's got victory in his sights here. And that's the shuffle of someone who knows they're about to win.
Absolutely. And there it is, Murderous Redcap. You take 2, and Ralph Batesh with Abzan Company puts himself into the finals. Fantastic finish. You can see him just put his arms up in the air.
Shrug.
Yeah. Yeah, great job for both of these players, but Ralph Batesh is going to be the one in the finals. That's going to do it for the semis here from Detroit.
Qualify for the next Pro Tour on Magic Online. Go 5-0 or 4-1 in a preliminary to advance to the finals. You can see the full schedule at mtgo.com.
Hello there. Welcome back to the booth here at Grand Prix Detroit. That's Luis Scott Vargas. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe. That was a fun semifinal round.
Oh, yeah.
A little bit of a tough ending there for Huang, not being able to cast your spells. You just don't see that often from the Eldrazi deck. They tend